All right, get ready because today we are going on a deep dive into a world that, might seem pretty simple at first glance.
Okay.
Children's stories.
Yeah.
But trust me on this one. These tales about a cat named Mellow and her friends in the forest pack a surprising amount of depth,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to friendship and community.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got a ton of stories to get through today.
A
So,
lot of material.
yeah, let's just jump right in.
Okay, so what's so interesting to me is how these like straightforward, tales for young children actually give us a pretty fascinating lens to look at some complex social dynamics. Like,
Oh, yeah.
we'll see how they play with these ideas of, belonging and altruism and even like the psychology of how groups behave.
Yeah, so we start off with Mellow, right? This
Mhm.
gentle and curious cat who's living her best life in the forest. And I think a lot of kids' stories have like a special protagonist,
Right. Yeah.
But Mellow's charm, I think, comes from how ordinary she is.
Right.
She's not trying to save the world or anything. She's just genuinely kind and loves her friends.
And it's like such an interesting choice like the authors made there because Mello's ordinary kindness and her like, consistent caring for others,
Yeah.
that ends up having this huge impact on the whole community. And it makes you think about, how we underestimate
Sure.
just like everyday compassion.
Yeah, and she's already got like this tight-knit group of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Bunny, Squeaky, and Hoot.
Gang's all here.
Yeah, each of them with like, their own personality. It's
Mhm.
like that classic found family trope,
Right.
but with a woodland twist.
Yeah. And this immediately brings in this concept of diversity in the group, right?
Yeah.
You got the playful energy from Bunny
Mm-hmm.
and then Squeaky, who's more cautious, and then Hoot, who's wise,
Yeah.
grounding everyone.
Yeah.
And it's within this dynamic that Spike the Hedgehog shows up,
Oh, yeah.
lost and scared,
Yeah, and Mello just immediately welcomes him in,
right away.
helps him feel safe, introduces him to everyone. It's a really powerful example of empathy, and it's done in such a subtle way.
And the way they handle Spike's arrival really changes things up from like typical children's story tropes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because instead of him being an outsider who, creates conflict or disrupts things,
Right.
he actually makes the group stronger.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to think about there in terms of how diverse groups not only survive, but thrive through mutual support.
And that support becomes so crucial during the winter when it gets really harsh and all the friends come together to help Spike stay warm.
Yeah.
It's really heartwarming to see them sharing everything and building him a shelter and just looking out for each other.
Yeah.
But there was one part that really stuck with me.
Okay, what's that?
Hoot's storytelling.
Yeah, yes. Hoot the storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
That's so fascinating because he's not just entertaining everyone.
Right.
He's telling these tales about the history of the forest and how everyone cooperated and was kind to each other.
Yeah,
And it makes you think about storytelling as like a way to pass down values
for sure.
and reinforce this idea of a shared history,
Yeah, those stories almost become like a source of warmth themselves.
don't they?
Yeah.
Like you can just feel the group all huddled together,
Totally.
drawing strength from those stories that they all share.
Yeah, it makes me think about,
Yeah.
oh gosh, what was his name?
Oh, you're thinking of,
Yeah, the sociologist who studied storytelling and social cohesion.
oh, right. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it shows how these stories aren't just entertainment. They're actually shaping how the group sees itself
Mhm.
and their commitment to helping one another. It's subtle, but it's really powerful.
Then spring arrives, and of course, with it comes a berry picking adventure.
Of course, because what's a good children's story without a little outdoor adventure?
Exactly.
Right.
But it's more than just fun and games, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because it's during this adventure that we meet Finn the fox.
Oh, yeah, Finn.
Yeah, and he's shy, and his introduction lets the story get into, all the complexities of how groups work. Because even when you're in a welcoming environment,
Mm-hmm.
there can still be, worries about bringing someone new into the group.
Yeah, and just like with Spike, Mello and her friends extend that same warmth and inclusiveness to Finn. They share their berries, invite him to play.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, Finn's hesitation just melts away, and he's part of the group.
He's one of them now.
Yeah, and it's a great example of how these little acts of inclusion can create a ripple effect of belonging.
And it's interesting because it's not just Mellow who's doing the welcoming this time.
Oh, that's true.
The other friends, even Spike, who is the newcomer himself, are actively trying to make Finn feel comfortable. And it shows how building a really inclusive community is everyone's responsibility.
Yeah, and so the group is changing, they're growing closer, and then Mello gets this grand idea of forest festival to celebrate friendship.
Oh.
which is so sweet and whimsical.
Oh.
But I'm sensing there's a little more to it than just a fun get-together.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The festival isn't just some random event. It's like the culmination of all the values and relationships that have been built up throughout all the stories.
Yeah.
It's them celebrating their journey together and their resilience and their dedication to kindness.
And everyone helps make it happen. There's this sense of like collective effort and joy.
Yeah,
Reminds me of those community gatherings you see in real life,
for sure.
where people come together to celebrate their shared identity.
Exactly. It's a reminder that these simple stories about forest animals are actually tapping into something very basic and human, our need to belong, connect, and celebrate together.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, that sense of like collective joy that you mentioned is such a key element in these stories.
Yeah, for sure.
The festival isn't just about having fun. It's a big representation of, what do they call it?
Oh, yeah.
Collective effervescence.
That's it.
Yeah, that feeling of energy and unity you get when people come together for like a shared reason.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's interesting how even though they're written for kids,
Yeah.
these stories actually touch on some really complex sociological ideas.
Right.
Like that idea of collective effervescence. It makes you think about the importance of like rituals and celebrations for building strong communities.
Yeah.
Even outside of these forest creatures.
Exactly. It shows how we're all social beings.
Yeah.
Like, deep down,
Yeah.
we want to connect and we need those shared experiences that bring us together.
Yeah.
And, you know, give us that feeling of belonging.
And it's not just about celebrating the good times either, right?
Right.
These stories also show how that sense of community can be a source of strength when things are tough.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like when the friends help Spike during that harsh winter.
Absolutely. And, you know, think about Hoot's storytelling again. During that hard time, he doesn't just tell random stories. He tells stories about how the forest has always been resilient and how everyone cooperated.
Right.
He's basically reminding them that they've faced challenges before and they've overcome them together.
Yeah.
It's a powerful message about how we get strengths from our shared history and, you know, remembering things together.
It's like those stories themselves become like a source of resilience.
Yeah.
A reminder that they're not alone when things get tough.
And it brings to mind that idea of social capital.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that idea that our social networks have value.
Yeah.
These stories show how a close community with its shared history and strong connections can help you through hardship.
Right?
They provide emotional support, they help you practically, and they give you that feeling of belonging,
Yeah.
which can make all the difference when things are rough.
It makes me think about how often we as adults try to handle problems all by ourselves.
Oh, yeah, we do.
These stories are like a gentle reminder that it's okay to rely on each other, to ask for help, and to get strength from those around us.
It's a message we forget a lot in a society that values individualism
Yeah, for sure.
and self-reliance.
Right.
But we're not meant to do everything alone. We're designed for connection and depending on each other. And these stories, even though they're simple,
Yeah.
remind us of that basic truth.
And they do it in such a subtle way.
Yeah.
There's no preaching or lecturing. It's
Yeah.
just woven into the stories.
Right.
Like that part where Squeaky finds those sticks and starts making music at the festival.
Oh, yeah.
And then the birds join in with their chirping.
Yeah.
It's just like this spontaneous moment of joy and connection.
That little detail actually says a lot about the power of shared creativity
For sure.
when you're building a community.
Yeah.
It's not about planned performances or anything like that.
Right.
It's about those genuine, unscripted moments of connection that happen when people feel safe and comfortable enough to just be themselves.
And how quickly that spreads throughout the whole community.
Yeah.
It's contagious.
Totally.
One person gets creative and then another person.
Yeah. And all of a sudden,
And suddenly the whole forest is just filled with music and laughter. It's such a good example of how even little contributions can add up to something really magical.
it reminds us that building community isn't about doing these big things or being a hero.
Right.
It's about those everyday moments where we connect and those small acts of sharing and taking part
Yeah.
that all add up to that sense of belonging and joy.
You know, it's really striking that Mellow, who is our main character, isn't some hero with superpowers.
Yeah, she's
Just an ordinary cat who chooses to be kind.
yeah.
And yet her actions change the whole community.
It's such a great message about how we all have the potential to make a difference,
For sure.
no matter what our status or abilities are.
Yeah.
Mellow isn't a leader in like the traditional sense,
Right.
but she makes good things happen by just being consistently kind and inclusive.
It's all about those small everyday acts of kindness, like listening to someone, helping out, or even just smiling.
Yeah, and doing those things consistently can have a huge impact.
And it's also about recognizing that we're all connected.
Yes.
Mellow being kind to Spike doesn't just help Spike. It helps the entire community.
Exactly.
It strengthens their bond, creates a culture of caring,
Mhm.
and in the end, makes the forest a better place for everyone.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, if we all tried to be a little more like Mellow, what kind of world could we make?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It challenges us to think about how we can make our own communities better.
Yeah.
What little acts of kindness can we do today?
Right.
How can we create a stronger sense of belonging in our own lives and the lives of people around us?
We've spent all this time, exploring this surprisingly complex world of Mellow and her forest friends.
Yeah.
And we've seen how these children's stories can teach us about community and resilience and just being kind in our everyday lives.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we take these charming tales and, apply their wisdom to our own lives?
Right, because our lives aren't exactly in a woodland setting.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really great question.
Yeah.
Like, how do we actually live these lessons instead of just enjoying the stories? I think the key is realizing that you don't need to make big gestures to make the world a kinder and more connected place.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about those small, consistent choices that we make every day.
So it's not about waiting for a chance to be a hero. It's about choosing compassion in those little moments.
Exactly. Like, remember when Mellow noticed Spike was freezing in the snow?
Yeah.
She wasn't trying to be a hero or anything.
Yeah.
She was just paying attention to those around her and reacting with care.
Yeah.
That's something we can all get better at, being aware of what others need.
Right.
Whether it's a friend going through something tough or even a stranger who seems lost.
So it's like shifting the focus outward, looking for those chances to help out, listen, or even just smile.
Exactly.
But sometimes even when we want to help, it's hard to know where to start.
Yeah, there's this thing in psychology called the bystander effect.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's that idea that the more people see something happening, the less likely anyone is to actually do something about it.
Right, we assume someone else will step up, or we're afraid of doing the wrong thing.
Exactly. But these stories give us a great way to overcome, that they show us that even little actions, when everyone does them, can have a huge impact.
So instead of waiting for someone else, we should just take inspiration from Mellow and her friends and jump right in.
Exactly.
Even if it feels awkward or it doesn't matter.
Remember Squeaky finding those sticks and making music?
Yeah.
That was a small thing, but it brought so much joy and connection to everyone there.
That's true.
We don't always realize how powerful our little contributions can be, especially when we're part of a community where everyone's helping out.
Speaking of community, one of the things that really struck me about these stories is how Mellow and her friends celebrate their differences.
Yeah.
They don't try to make everyone the same, and yet they're so close.
That's so important. Embracing diversity makes a community stronger and more resilient.
Yeah.
Think about a forest ecosystem.
Okay.
All the different plants and animals create a balance
Right.
that helps the whole system thrive.
Yeah.
And it's the same with human communities. When we welcome different viewpoints and experiences and ways of being, we create a richer, more vibrant, and more adaptable society.
It challenges us to look at our own biases, doesn't it?
It does.
To actually seek out perspectives that are different from ours, to be open to learning from people who see the world differently than we do.
It's easy to surround ourselves with people who are just like us.
Yeah.
But that creates an echo chamber where our beliefs never get challenged.
Yay.
These stories remind us that we grow when we step outside of our comfort zones and talk to people who have different opinions and find common ground, even though we disagree.
It makes you realize that these simple children's stories are actually giving us a plan for building a more tolerant, compassionate, and connected world. It's inspiring, but it also feels a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, where do we even begin to put all of this into practice?
Well, you start small.
Okay.
Think about your own circles, your family, friends, work. Where can you be a little kinder? Where can you make an effort to be more inclusive?
Yeah.
What little step can you take today to build a stronger community right where you are?
Maybe it's reaching out to a friend who's having a tough time, volunteering, or just listening with an open mind to someone who sees things differently.
And remember, building a kinder and more connected world is a process. There will be bumps in the road, moments of doubt, and times when we don't live up to our own ideals.
Right.
But the important thing is to keep trying, keep learning, and keep practicing those little acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Because when a whole community does those things together, it can really change the world.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, we want to leave you with this.
Yeah.
What small act of kindness will you choose today?
What little seed of compassion will you plant in your own world?
Because even the smallest actions can have an impact that goes way beyond what we can imagine.
Until next time, may your journey be filled with kindness to connection and the joy of discovering things together.